Welcome to the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare, the podcast for busy healthcare leaders who are ready to get out of survival mode so they can focus on what matters most. This is where the burnout stops and the real talk starts. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Carter, and each week I sit down with healthcare innovators who get it. We will unpack the chaos, laugh through the hard stuff, and get you at least 2 practical tips you can use at work right away. If you're ready to clear the chaos and lead with impact, you've come to the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another episode of the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Carter, and we are here to help you as busy healthcare leaders clear the chaos so you can lead with impact. Today's guest is a fellow entrepreneur and healthcare leader who I met through our mutual marketing expert connection who works with female founders. I felt an immediate bond with today's guest because we were the only 2 healthcare leaders in the group, and there's just something unique about our industry that makes us feel like instant battle buddies, isn't there? Our guest today is Dr. Jamie Parks, who is a business coach and CEO of American Hearing and Audiology. She oversees 20 clinics across 8 states, and as the host of her podcast, Scaling Her Empire, she's also the founder of JLP Consulting, where she empowers female healthcare practitioners to build thriving, multi-million-dollar practices through leadership, strategy, and financial freedom. I know we have so much we can learn from her today. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Megan. I am so excited to be here and I'm honored. So thank you for having me. You're absolutely right about that instant connection between healthcare leaders. We just get each other. We understand the world that each other comes from that is hard to explain to outsiders. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do like to start each episode with a question that can be somewhat hard to answer because of all the possible examples to choose from. But let's start with maybe tell us about your most chaotic leadership moment.
I think, wow, what, right? Like, where do I even start? But I think my most chaotic moment was when 75% of my team quit on me within a 30-day period. And as you can imagine, that is stressful. And I'm talking about key members of my team, an audiologist, front desk support, a technician, people that I really thought were going to be with me for a long time, and they were completely bought in. And I remember sitting in my office thinking, what just happened? Like, how did this happen? And it was really like watching a house of cards collapse. And I had to face the brutal reality that I wasn't showing up as the leader they needed or wanted. And that crisis really forced me to completely rethink how I lead. And honestly, it became the foundation of everything I teach now about human-centered leadership. And when I'm talking to other people, building their empires and being that CEO of their practice. So it was chaotic, but it also became, it was a blessing in disguise for me.
I love that you had the courage and the self-awareness and the vulnerability to take a look at how much of this is mine to own and how can I learn from it. I think that not a lot of leaders would openly not only have that conversation with themselves, much less share it with the world. So I appreciate your courage with that. I think that's amazing.
Absolutely.
And it's no surprise then that you've taken what you've learned over many years and you now share those valuable lessons with your clients. So maybe tell us about how you became a healthcare innovator.
Well, I don't think my path was traditional, not that any of ours is, right? I started as a clinical audiologist, and like most healthcare practitioners, I thought being good at patient care automatically made me good at business. But spoiler alert, you and I, we both know it doesn't, right?
Yep.
And after that, that massive team exit, I just talked about, I had to get really real about what I didn't know. And so I started studying leadership, not just healthcare management, but actual human psychology and what makes teams thrive. And, I realized that healthcare leaders need different skills than what we learn in clinical training. We're taught to diagnose and treat patients, but nobody teaches us how to diagnose what our team needs or how to treat workplace dysfunction, right? And that's when I started developing my own frameworks, things like, treating leadership challenges the way I'd approach patient care, where I get curious, I diagnose the real problem, and then I create a treatment plan rather than just coming in hot with the answer, right?
I love that. I love you said coming in hot because you're right. And I think there are so many healthcare leaders that might be listening to this that might giggle because who of us can say we've never had one of these moments where you're like 1000th day at work, you've already gotten the text, emails, and calls, you already know what fire is awaiting you, and you come in hot like a firefighter with a fire extinguisher on each hip ready to just knock it out so you can actually get back to your day. But the power of that pause, to your point, and really evaluating how you're going to approach it, that's a powerful tactic. I love that.
Yeah.
We know that the one thing we can count on in this crazy healthcare system is the constant of change. And change typically creates a significant amount of anxiety or fear, and especially resistance in some cases. So can you share some examples where you as a leader tried to help your team navigate big changes, but were met with that resistance?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now I'm dealing with big changes in the audiology industry. We're navigating constant change from the insurance side of things. And as we try to implement new systems, I definitely get pushback. And I see this in my consulting clients as well. As we make changes for improvement to steer the business or the ship, as I call it, in the right direction, we're going to get pushback because change is hard. Change is hard for a lot of people. And rather than being stuck in that classic leadership trap where we hit resistance and our instinct is to push harder, right? Manage more, control, control, control. What I actually need to do and what I coach my clients on as well is just to slow down, get more data, and get more curious about the resistance, about why the team is resisting, because that resistance isn't about the change itself. It's about the why and how to help them through it rather than just pushing to make change. And so, I always am asking my consulting clients and myself when I feel resistance is, where can I take a step back and really, really get curious here?
Yeah, I love that response. So many examples for all of us in our careers as well. I remember sitting in meetings as a leader where the group was describing this massive change, and that group had this detailed rollout plan, but rarely did I see them call out the barriers themselves. And we know that any successful change requires buy-in from those end users, but so few change initiatives include that in the rollout. What are some of the root causes behind change resistance, and what practical strategies could you share with us to address that?
Mm. The root cause is almost always the same. People resist change when they don't feel seen or heard in the process, right? Nobody wants to show up to a meeting and just be told exactly how to do things and without understanding, how do I even fit into this, right? So my two go-to strategies are, first, lead with curiosity instead of pressure. When someone pushes back, instead of explaining why they're wrong or why this is the right path, I get curious. I ask questions like, help me understand what concerns you have about this, or what would need to be different for this to work better. Right? I want that input and I want to get really curious. Most resistance dissolves when people genuinely feel heard, right? Second, let go of controlling the how. As leaders, we often get attached to exactly how something gets implemented. But if you can clearly communicate the what and the why, then let your team figure out the how, give them the ownership over the solution, then people rarely resist their own ideas, right?
Right.
They're more bought in. And I think the key is just remembering that, again, resistance isn't defiance. It's usually fear or confusion. And when we approach it with that curiosity of instead of force, we get way better results.
Yeah, I love that. Let's also maybe dive into, because that's absolutely brilliant, So let's say we're in a situation, I'm a newer leader, I'm busy, I'm exhausted, I've got yet another change I'm rolling out, I'm getting resistance, and I attempt the let my staff or my frontline folks figure out the how.
Uh-huh.
There are usually a few creative folks who will come up with these brilliant strategies, but they aren't necessarily always realistic. And so we can't necessarily always roll it out the way they want. So
Mhm.
what strategies would you share with the audience on how to navigate some of that?
I would use the exact same strategy is get
Okay.
curious, right? We
Yeah.
are the leader. So I get
Yeah.
very curious and I want them walk me through that process. Have you
Yeah.
thought about this? What outcome are you expecting, right? If you're seeing the problem, then you want to uncover it so that they see it. And you do that by getting curious. Tell me more, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, it's a gut check for me as a leader, but sometimes I have to let them make the discovery or the error on their own so that they can learn from it,
Yeah.
right? I can
Absolutely.
teach as much as I want, but also at the end of the day, when I've tried this, sometimes I am surprised. Like, that's not what I expected to happen. That's
Yeah.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you, because
brilliant.
I've clearly invited you on my team because I believe in you and I want you here and I want your input.
Yeah.
I'm not always going to have the right answers. And so sometimes I just have to let it roll.
I love that. I love that too. That's to always surprise delightfully and rightfully so that the end user, the person closest to the work, whatever it is, they know what they need. They are the
Yeah.
expert. And so sometimes even taking the time to acknowledge that and
Right.
be honest with them. There are some changes that we as leaders were caught in the middle. We have no control over it, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't our idea. We may not even support it, but it's coming nonetheless. And so sometimes it's having that transparent conversation with, hey guys, I know this is hard.
Mhm.
I feel your pain. I get it. It's a non-negotiable. So how do we move forward
Yes.
together as a team? And they have such brilliant, if we can all kind of shift a little bit with what we can control and what we can't and kind of row the boat
Yeah.
together, that's powerful. Another
Agreed.
example I love, and I think you and I have talked about this before, is sometimes if you have the luxury of brainstorming with the group, not all changes give you time for that, but let them just brain dump all the ideas. There's no bad
Mhm.
idea, right? You can take all those ideas and arrange them either on an effort impact matrix or some other tool where it's visual for the group and they can see, okay, my suggestion sounds great on paper, but it's very high effort and likely very low impact.
Yeah.
So is that the right
Mhm.
how? And that's working through it together versus you as the leader
Absolutely.
jumping, saying, nope, that can't work. Very different feeling for them. Oh, that's
100%.
brilliant.
And
I love
people
that.
grow more when they're involved in that process, right?
Yeah.
And if you are a leader that wants to grow, and I say this, managing 20 clinics, right? I don't want to be the only person in the company with the answers. I need my leaders to grow and step up.
Yeah.
And so I have to give them those opportunities.
That's great. I love that so much. Any other practical strategies that you want to share just in general with leading change or dealing with those human dynamics? What is something you would have loved to have told yourself 20 years ago that you wish you knew?
Mm. I would have told myself that this will be the biggest self-development, self-growth uh, opportunity that I could ever even imagine, right? You think about running a business and, Tony Robbins says it's 80% psychology and 20% what you know. And I knew, I thought it was the other way around. And so this
Good.
whole journey that I've been on has really been finding out who Jamie is, who Jamie wants to be. How do I lead? How do I stay authentic to myself? What are my values? And so I think 20 years ago, I would have said, hey, spend a little bit more time getting to know yourself rather than following the track of success. I think we often, especially as a young female, I know I got into healthcare and I looked at the woman at the top and I dressed like her and I acted like her and I became her, right? And then when I went to the next company, I did the same thing. And over time, I did actually, take what I liked from each, but it was like stop emulating and let yourself. And I really had to do that when I stepped into being CEO. I have business partners and we launched another telehealth company. And so when I stepped into CEO, I had this fear of, I'm not like that CEO, right? I could manage the clinics that I started because I knew them from the ground up, but taking over, how do I become a leader? And I said, I'm not going to manage like this.
Yeah.
And that was a problem. And I was asking my business partner to tell me how to do it. And he just said, that's not what we need. We need
Yeah.
Jamie CEO. We need you as you. And so I think just really, leaning into who I am as a leader and a person, and continuing to stay authentic, but also to keep growing. Like I never
Absolutely.
quit growing as a leader. I'm constantly reading books, asking questions, going to masterminds, just challenging myself all the time because, well, first of all, I love learning, but I don't ever want to be stagnant, right? And I'm never going to be that person that thinks I have all the answers.
I love that. And when we see people who do take that route, and what happens to those leaders and their employees if you can't evolve over time, especially in healthcare. I mean, things change. Our new generational influx of clinicians, they have different expectations of us. It's not something to resist, back to change
Right.
resistance. We have to figure out how to lead with them, not against them. And so I love you give
Absolutely.
that example of evolving. And I think that's a great message too for any healthcare leader right now who's listening to this and is exhausted and burned out. When was the last time you just took some time to check in with yourself and say, who am I? What are my values? I know what they were 10 years ago. Has it changed since the pandemic? And then
Right.
and then reflect on how I'm showing up at work. Am I in alignment with myself? And I
Absolutely.
personally, I don't know about you, I think you have examples of this too, but there are some roles that I had over the years where it was very clear who I am and what my values are and how I want to show up is not in alignment with the organization's leadership
Yeah.
team. We'll say one thing, we do another, and there was a rub. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to make a really difficult choice to pivot. But what we
Yeah.
can control, right, which is ourselves, how we show up,
Yes.
that's so powerful. And your team sees that and they feel
Yeah.
that.
I mean, that's
That's
why I
amazing.
started my company in the first place is I was working for a private practice and they sold to a corporation, and I had already been there, done that. And I thought, nope, this is not in alignment with who I am today or who I am now. And I'm not going down that path. I'm going to do this myself.
Yeah, the courage that it takes to recognize that, say that, and admit it to yourself, because who doesn't love security? Like who doesn't love
Right.
having I mean, especially if you're raising a family or caring for your parents, whatever your
Mhm.
situation, a lot of us will stay in these roles because we feel trapped. We don't have other options. And
Right.
yet we know having made the transition in the long run, it's always worth it. It always pays off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, these are incredible tactics. I know that we're going to help our listeners as they navigate leading their teams through big changes this month. Thank you so much for sharing them.
Absolutely.
I also like to make sure we bring some humor into our conversations because let's be real, healthcare is a hard industry. So tell us where you're going for some laughter in your life right now.
Mm, that's a great question. I'm a huge on community and tapping into friendships, masterminds, groups that bring me true joy and
Yeah.
support, right? Finding my people. So
Yeah.
I've really surrounded myself with people, with great people who get me and can cheer me on no matter what I'm going through. But I would say anytime I need a good laugh or I'm feeling like a dark cloud over me and I know I need to lighten up, gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but I go to TikTok or YouTube and
Yeah.
I love to genuinely I love watching people fall down or get scared.
That is
Those
hilarious.
are my things. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, they make me belly laugh. And, it just, I think laughter is such great medicine for
Oh my
anything.
gosh.
And so,
Yeah.
maybe it's because I have been known to fall down pretty easily in my own life, but,
That is
that's
so funny.
definitely something that will get a giggle. So
Yeah,
I
I
love
love it.
it.
It's sometimes I think it's just the physicality, like the physical humor. Like I think of Jim Carrey. His
Mhm.
comedy style is very physical. Like his
Yes.
arms, he's always in motion,
Yes.
and so I feel like that parallels some of those videos where it's like you're not expecting it, and the
Yes.
person just suddenly crashes out. There's a show that I think it still runs on MTV, old MTV, but it's called Ridiculousness. Have you ever seen it?
My husband and I watch this all yes, we love the reruns.
Yes.
Amazing.
It is my husband and son's like comfort show. We
Yes.
all have that comfort show. They love having that on in the background,
Yeah.
whether we're traveling or we're at home on the weekend, whatever it is, and I will hear both of them laugh hysterically.
Yes. And once you get the giggles, you can't stop.
Right.
Yeah. I have such a good time with my sister, and I say to her, I'm having such a good time with you, but what would be better is if you fell down right now, because
could just trip and fall. That'd be super for all of us.
We can talk about like our falls in the past and like literally laugh so hard we can't breathe.
That is hilarious.
So silly.
I love it. It's funny you say that because now it's bringing up a memory for me. A long time ago, when you go bowling, you're wearing the shoes. There are slick parts on that floor. You're supposed to stay behind. Like, girl, I have done the splits by accident. My body is not built to do the splits.
I would love that.
And so I refused to bowl. And so a couple years ago at our hospital, we had a new CEO. He wanted to take out the leaders, do a little social, something innocent like a bowling alley. And I would not put on shoes or go bowl. And he was so frustrated. And I finally told him, I said, I'm not going to do it because I've humiliated myself. He's like, oh, I didn't realize. You never know what trauma us anti-bowlers are carrying.
You don't. You have no idea.
So good. So good. I love that. Awesome. Well, I love all of this so much. Thank you again for your time today, Jamie. I am blessed to know you and grateful for all that you do. If our listeners want to connect with you further, where can they find you?
Thank you so much. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm pretty active on both, and I love connecting with, other leaders in the space. You can also check out my podcast, Scaling Her Empire, if you want to dive deeper into any of the, topics that I talked about today. And of course, if you're a healthcare practitioner who's ready to step into your CEO role, you can learn more about my consulting work at my website, which is jamieparks.com. And I'd love to continue the conversation.
I love that. Yeah. And just for the listeners, I'll include all of those links in the show notes. And then I'm also going to have a running list of all those really great questions that Jamie gave us when you're navigating change as part of your strategy. So I'll include all that. And I'm so thankful for you, Jamie. Thanks for being here today. And thanks again for listening in. And cheers to you, fellow Chaos Whispers. Until next time. Thanks for joining us on the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare. If today's episode resonated with you, please be sure to follow this podcast, rate, and leave a review on your favorite platform. I'm Dr. Megan Carter, and I will be back next week with more real talk, fresh strategies, and guests who are redefining what it means to lead with impact. Want to keep the conversation going? Be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and download free tools and resources from my website. Both links are in the show notes. Let's heal this broken healthcare system together, one day at a time.